For half a century, there were three words that meant you had truly made it in America. Not rich, not successful. Arrived. Those words were stamped onto a grille, and the grille belonged to Cadillac, the self-proclaimed standard of the world. Cadillac invented the technology that put every other car on the road. It set the bar that even Rolls-Royce measured itself against. And then, in 1982, the company that defined American luxury did something almost impossible. It built a car so cynical, so transparently cheap, that it nearly erased its own name. This is the story of how the most respected badge in America fell to the bottom of the worst cars ever lists, and how, against the odds, it is clawing its way back from the brink. To understand how far Cadillac fell, you have to understand how high it once stood. In 1908, in England, 3 Cadillacs were taken to a racetrack, completely taken apart, their parts shuffled into one giant pile, and then rebuilt at random. All 3 started and drove away. No one had ever proven interchangeable parts like that before. Cadillac won the Dewar Trophy and gave itself a motto it would spend 100 years trying to live up to: the standard of the world. 4 years later, it did something bigger. In 1912, Cadillac killed the hand crank, the dangerous lever that had broken arms and worse, and replaced it with the electric self-starter. Press a button, the engine fires. Every car you have ever driven owes that one moment to Cadillac. From there, Cadillac did not just lead, it towered. In 1930, while the rest of the world sank into the Depression, Cadillac launched a 16-cylinder engine, a rolling statement that the laws of the economy simply did not apply to its customers. By the 1950s, a Cadillac was the finish line of the American dream. The 1959 Eldorado wore tail fins almost 4 feet tall, chrome-like jewelry, a shape borrowed straight from a fighter jet. It was excess as a love language. For 5 straight decades, Cadillac was the best-selling luxury car in America, and the word itself became a synonym. The Cadillac of watches, the Cadillac of anything. No badge on earth carried more quiet authority, which is exactly why what came next was so hard to believe. The trouble began where success always hides it, at the very top, where no one believes they can lose. By the 1970s, Cadillac was selling more cars than ever, and its parent company, General Motors, had learned a dangerous trick. Why engineer a separate luxury car from scratch when you could take a cheaper Chevrolet or Oldsmobile, add chrome and a crest, and charge double? They called it badge engineering, and for a while, buyers did not notice. Then came the engines. A diesel V8, rushed out and unreliable, soured thousands of owners. A clever cylinder shut-off motor, meant to save fuel, instead bucked and stalled. The standard of the world was quietly becoming the standard of cutting corners. And in 1982, that corner cutting produced a single car that would stay a punchline for 40 years. It was called the Cimarron. On paper, the logic almost made sense. Mercedes and BMW were selling small luxury sedans, and Cadillac had nothing to fight them with. So Cadillac reached onto the GM parts shelf and grabbed the cheapest thing it could find: the Chevrolet Cavalier, a basic economy car. It bolted on leather, a grille, and a crest, and parked it in Cadillac showrooms for nearly twice the price. It even arrived with a 4-cylinder engine, and at first, a manual gearbox. Cadillac had not sold a 4-cylinder car in almost 70 years. Buyers walked into the dealership, recognized the dashboard from their secretary's Chevy, and walked right back out. The Cimarron did not just fail. It told every customer the ugly truth. The standard of the world would now sell you a Chevrolet in a tuxedo and hope you would not look underneath. While Cadillac was busy diluting its own name, an executioner was being built quietly in Japan. In 1989, Toyota launched a brand from nothing and called it Lexus. Its first car, the LS400, did the one thing Cadillac had forgotten how to do. It was simply ruthlessly excellent. Mercedes-grade quality, Toyota reliability, a price that undercut them all. That first year, Lexus sold barely 16,000 cars, while Cadillac sold over 260,000. It looked like no contest, but the numbers hid the rot. Cadillac's buyers were old, half of them over 60, in a luxury market whose average age was 52, and they were not being replaced. Cadillac's share of the American luxury market had already slid from 31% in 1980 to 22% by 1990, and it was still falling. The badge that once meant you had arrived now meant your grandfather had. The 1990s were Cadillac's wilderness. The cars became soft, anonymous sedans, floating on suspension, tuned for buyers who were, quite literally, dying off. Younger Americans who wanted luxury bought German, or they bought the new Japanese badges that carried no history at all. And that was the whole point. Cadillac had too much history, the wrong kind. It carried the smell of the nursing home parking lot. Inside General Motors, there were serious conversations about whether the brand even had a future, or whether the standard of the world had simply run out of road. To survive, Cadillac would have to do the hardest thing a 100-year-old company can do. It would have to stop apologizing for what it was and become something genuinely new. The first sign of life came from an unlikely place: a truck. In 1999, Cadillac put its crest on a big, brash SUV called the Escalade, and almost overnight, rappers, athletes, and movie stars turned it into a symbol. For the first time in decades, young people actually wanted a Cadillac. Then, in 2002, came the real revolution. Cadillac threw out the soft chrome curves and launched a design language it called art and science. Sharp, folded, razor-edged, like a stealth fighter, made street legal. The car that wore it, the CTS, did not try to outcomfort Mercedes. It tried to outdrive BMW. Cadillac took its new sedans to the Nürburgring in Germany, the most punishing racetrack on Earth, and tuned them there, on the enemy's home ground. It built a V-Series line with supercharged engines that embarrassed cars twice their price. The standard of the world had finally remembered that the standard was supposed to be hard to reach. Which brings us to the strangest twist of all. Cadillac, the brand that once defined the gasoline-powered American dream, has now bet its entire future on electricity. It is retiring the engines that made it famous and replacing its whole lineup with electric cars, the Lyriq, and at the very top, the Celestiq, a hand-built electric flagship priced beyond $300,000, aimed squarely at Rolls-Royce. It is, in a strange way, the most Cadillac thing imaginable, an outrageous statement of ambition, a return to the old idea that this badge belongs at the absolute top. Whether it works, no one knows yet. But the company that invented the self-starter, that set the standard the whole world copied, that nearly erased itself selling a Chevrolet in a crest, is once again trying to earn back three of the most loaded words in America. Cadillac spent its first 50 years proving it was the best, and its next 30 proving it had forgotten how. The Cimarron did not ruin Cadillac because it was a bad car. It ruined Cadillac because it revealed what the company had quietly started to believe, that the badge was worth more than the car beneath it, that a great name, all by itself, could carry you. It cannot. It never could. The standard of the world was never really a slogan. It was a dare, and Cadillac, 120 years later, is still trying to live up to it.